Hi folks, welcome on back to Mark Kelly Farms. Look at the strawberry bed here. Not all of everything you see is strawberries. Remember I told you about those rocks that Kelly and my granddaughter painted? So far they're working pretty good because we got strawberries that are not have not been eaten by birds. So far it's working out. Pretty good idea. Strawberry bed's looking pretty good. You can hear that pivot running in the background. They're irrigating out here quite a bit. They run straight pipe on those big old diesel motors, so you don't have to go out and check them. You can hear it and you can tell if it's running, so they don't have to drive all the way out there. So we've been super busy out here on the homestead. Been spending lots of time with my granddaughter because she was out here for 3 weeks, so that slowed us down a little bit because we were spending time with her, but we loved every minute of it. We met some new neighbors tonight. Kelsey, one of our new subscribers, actually one of our neighbors out here, so her and her husband Justin came by tonight. It was real nice to meet them. While I was gone, Kelly got the mulch put around the grain bin project here with her vincas. Cover up some of that dirt, keep it from drying out so quick. But we got some other stuff that we're doing here pretty quick, and when we're done with that, we'll get back working on this grain bin project. We finally got some of the herbs cut and they're in the kitchen to dry. Still got some lavender going in here. We got some oregano and some sage. The cilantro has bolted and gone to coriander seed. And look how fast those chives regrew. I just cut those about probably 3 days ago down at that level down there, and they've already came back that far. So the basil's coming right back. Pretty fast growing stuff. We had a couple parties out here this weekend. We had a birthday party for my granddaughter. Give her a little Nebraska love out here. Her real birthday's not till next week. But we had another party for the previous landowner. It was, I think, his 87th birthday. So his family came out here and they had a nice little family get together out here on the ranch. It was great to see everybody. Take a look in the greenhouse here. See, the tomatoes are still doing pretty good. I haven't got any fruit set yet, but I can. Oh, there's a little tomato going right there. So they're starting to come on. They're already up through this bottom shelf. I'm going to let them come all the way up here. But that's what's going on in here. They're growing fine. I was wondering if those tubs were going to be big enough. I'm pretty sure they will. We'll just throw some fertilizer in there. They should be fine. Tubs out here still in good. I'm going to pull these parsnips and these carrots out probably this week. And we have 2 more tomatoes out here. Kelly tore a hole in my greenhouse, our greenhouse, with the lawnmower the other day, so I got to patch that. Grapes are still doing good. Growing like crazy, like weeds out here. These big old grapes on here. This Concord grape is just loaded with grapes. Lots and lots of grapes on this vine. They are not seedless, so you got to deal with the seeds on those. We'll probably just make some jelly with them or something. That'll be fine. So this last week we got a couple inches of rain and we got some wind to go with that. And look what happened to our corn. We had some of it fall over. So I am told that it will come back up It'll kind of curl around. It's still going to grow. You can see over here, these actually snapped and broke over. So tops of those are going to die off. Those aren't going to make it. But we came through, we put new flags up because our old flags, they're kind of cheesy garbage flags, just like these. Really, really thin. We're going to have to get some of the nice vinyl ones. But I still got to pick up these old ones. But this will be enough to last us the rest of the year. That'll last out the new ones I put up. Luckily I had enough to where I could just throw some more up. But I think most of our corn is going to make it. We got the bush hogging done out here on the outside of the garden. Stump guy still has not shown up. Let's take a walk in the garden. You can see the corn kind of got laid over on this side of the tomatoes. But like I said, the sun's tracking overhead and just a little bit to the south. So the tomatoes are still getting enough sunshine. We picked a handful of our cucumbers here. I've kind of given up on the trellis on these cucumbers because they're so heavy they don't want to stay up on it. So I'm just going to let them sprawl a little bit and we'll keep picking them. But we're starting getting some tomatoes set on these tomato vines. We started seeing some tomatoes here and there. We got snow peas we need to come out here and pick. But there's green tomatoes all over these vines. You can't see them. They kind of hide down inside in there. We're going to come through out here tomorrow. We're going to prune some of this unruly stuff off down here because the other stuff is growing up through the trellis just fine, and I kind of tuck it and weave it back and forth. If it's on one side, I push it to the other and vice versa. And it stays on that trellis real nice. Got lots of flowers, and there's lots of fruit if you look for it. See, there's some in there if you can see them, but they're still green, so they're hard to see. You can see the Cherokee purples are kind of a different kind of looking vine. Our green beans, our Blue Lake green beans here are doing good. We'll be picking beans here pretty soon. The butternut squash, acorn squash, the melons and the watermelon are pretty much taking over that whole side over there. Let's go take a look. It's all going to run in together over there, but that'll help keep the weeds down. We've already seen some melons set inside of there. But big, crazy, bushy vines. Another look at the tomatoes. I see a bunch of green tomatoes in there. Some real nice ones down in there. Can you see them? Yeah. So we'll have some tomatoes before long. A lot of these onions are usable. Some of them have bulbed out to 3 or 4 inches. So as we need onions, we can probably come out here and start pulling onions. Our purslane weeds are getting going again. I need to get out here and hoe the middles again. These are our dry beans, looking real good. Our determinate tomatoes doing real good in those cages. We got peppers coming on, so if we needed that one, we could come out here and sneak that one. And then got a bunch of jalapenos set on there. We're about done with the chard, and I have a bunch of lamb's quarter in this chard here. So we're probably going to rip this chard out before long. The beets are doing real good. The soil is swelling where they're growing, and we'll be pickling some beets here pretty soon. The parsnips are growing real good. Potatoes are doing good. We picked a bunch of turnips. We put a bunch of turnips in the root cellar, and I also put some in the fridge. I'm kind of doing an experiment to see what's the best way to store them. So I don't know if the ones in the root cellar will be cold enough, but we probably came through and we picked out about half of these turnips. and we're letting the rest of them get a little bit bigger. You can see on the tops of them when they're big, you know when to pull them. We've been getting loads and loads of squash. We've made 2 batches of our zucchini relish already, and we just picked Friday. Today is Tuesday, and it's time to pick again. We're going to have a whole nother mess. You need to pick squash every couple days. Look at this zucchini over here. That was a pretty small zucchini the other day, and now it's already on the big side. So you got to stay on top of that zucchini. Carrots, looking good. But you can tell we've been busy. You don't usually see this many weeds out here in our garden. The potato plants are starting to die back a little bit. So it won't be long we'll be pulling these potatoes up and getting them in the root cellar. But I got all that bush hog like I said I was going to do, and got all that bush hog down there on that end of the garden. I got the compost pile turned over down there. Let's go out and show you the apple tree. All of our asparagus is going to seed out here. Once these vines start giving up, we'll mow all this down. You can see the garden from out here. Kelly's picking some snow peas. Let's take a look at these apples. This tree is huge, and because it's so big, none of this got thinned. So these apples are going to be on the smaller side, which is fine. You can see my hand, but they're still usable for sure. Looks like they got a little pink tinge to them, so they're not too far off. But this small tree is loaded with them. Here's our little bench over here under the tree. This tree also has quite a few apples. Not near as much as the tree next to it. But that's going to make for larger apples. You can see they're not quite as prolific in this tree, but that's going to give us a much better crop. Kind of naturally thinned itself. I think we got a late frost, which got those 2 apple trees over there haven't set any fruit at all. But this is going to make for some real nice apples on this tree, being naturally thinned out like that. The bees are still doing great over there. I got some bush hogging done down in here over the weekend. Let's go take a look at Kelly's sunflowers over next to the barn. Sunflowers are doing great. They're a little over probably 4 foot tall over here against the barn. That'll be a pretty sight once they get flowering. You'll be able to see them out there from the road. She's got some of her zinnias flowering down here in the middle. This yellow stuff is a weed that grows here. It almost looks like a watermelon vine, but it's not. But I'm letting it grow because the bees are getting in there and getting nectar off of them flowers. But when it's all done, we'll bush hog it all down. Some of our wildflowers are coming up down in here in this mess. And once they get established, they'll keep coming back. But a lot of this down here is weeds. But we bush hog all this down anyway, so we're just trying to get some flowers established over here. That's an old cow tunnel down there underneath the road. I don't know if I've told you about that before. When the previous owner owned all this land around us here, they used to run cattle underneath the road to that other side over there, and they'd walk through that tunnel. These IBC totes you see here, you'll see a lot done with these on YouTube and on the internet. We get them free around here because the farmers get fertilizer and weed killer and everything in them, and the companies don't take them back. So I have a local farmer here that gives them to me for free, as many as I want. I just grabbed 4 for now. My buddy from Tennessee came up and got 6 or 8 of them and hauled them back down there. But I'm going to do some raised beds with these. We're going to cut them right down the middle, and then we'll flip the plastic tubs around inside the cage, and we'll do some raised beds with these. Do some of the stuff like green beans and stuff like that, that's really hard to bend over and pick all that stuff. It's hard on the back. We'll start doing them in those once I get those set up out in the garden. And we'll do kind of a wicking system with those too. We saw a couple models that we like, and we're going to give that a shot with those. So a couple of you have asked about pruning fruit trees, and there's been a couple posts on some other websites that I follow where their trees have gotten big and unruly, and the limbs are really long, and they're bending over clear to the ground. They're full of fruit, and it's breaking the limbs. You don't want to let your trees get to that point. This tree here was in pretty bad shape when we acquired the property about 6 months ago, and we're trying to make a good tree out of it. So first thing you want to do is you want to prune your tree down to whatever manageable level you want, 6 or 8 feet, something like that, and keep it down to that height every year. So whatever grows new up here every year, you want to cut off. Keep it at that height that you want. And then these other limbs, you want to keep them ruly. You'll see this limb here is out there quite a ways. So we'll come back and probably cut this limb here. And then during the year, if this was full of apples, we'd come through here and we'd thin these apples out. We'd probably take almost half of the apples off the tree. And that'll do two things. It's going to keep your tree from breaking down, and it's also going to give you a larger crop of apples. So even though this tree looks fairly nice, anytime you have a fruit tree, you want to clean the center out of it to where the light can get down in the center of the tree. So we're trying to develop some more branches onto this tree to where we can do that. And then once we get some branches established on this side, we'll probably cut up here to cut this middle out to get some middle light down in here. But we'll see how it's going to go. That middle trunk in there may have to stay, and then we'll work around that depending on what we get growing down here. But it's going to be a long-term process to bring this tree back. Otherwise, it'll just kind of look ugly and grow fruit. You know, it's not going to hurt nothing. But this one over here is more of a traditional shape that you're looking for. So when you buy your trees, you're going to get most of the time a long, spindly stalk or trunk coming up. So after you plant your tree, you want to cut it down just over knee height, and then you'll get these secondary branches come out. And that's what you're wanting it to look like. See, we have that nice lower structure there in that tree. You don't want a real tall, spindly trunk going up the middle. And then the inside of this tree is all cleaned out to where the light can get down in there. Now these trees didn't get dormant sprayed this year, so you're seeing some little weird stuff going on, but we'll get them dormant sprayed this coming fall once the leaves drop. We'll put a copper and some oil on here, and that'll help out a lot of that. But you can see how I brought this tree down, because it was crazy overgrown, way too tall, and we cut a lot of the center out. So this is this year's new growth up here. So once this tree goes dormant, drops all its leaves, all this stuff up top is going to get cut off. And you can do it. It's not going to hurt the tree. If it's a bigger limb, put some sealer on it. But you can keep these trees manageable. They don't have to be dwarf trees. And even a dwarf tree will get out of hand if you let it grow too much and get too crazy. Like this limb over here, we can prune off. Because if that limb there was full of apples, that would be hanging down. And you can also thin by pruning. If you go to Dave Wilson Nursery, they've got a lot of good videos on thinning and pruning and planting fruit trees. I highly recommend their website. They're out from California, where we used to live, but they grow trees for all over the place. And it's a real good resource if you go visit Dave Wilson Nursery. He'll show you how to thin just by pruning the ends of the limbs off. And that's a way you can do it too. Well, I hope you've enjoyed garden tour, I think number 7. I think last week was 6. Let me show you my pear tree here real quick. So you see, when we planted this pear tree, it was one stalk that came all the way up. So we cut that stalk off, and now you have these side shoots coming onto this tree, and that's what's going to make your secondary branches. And all this little teeny tiny stuff down on the bottom will prune off. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. Probably going to be about a week before we put out another video. I'll warn you of that. So just keep watching. We'll get back at it. Love you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy. Come on back and see us here at Mark Kelly Farm.